Here's how to make your own microwave edit, whether you're a beginner or an advanced editor. I'll also be explaining how to actually rotate and how to make everything look clean. First of all, for anyone who's confused about where this trend came from and what it is, Please.aap is a Resident Evil fan account. And this edit of theirs just happened to be the one that popped off and people started to call it the microwave edit. But rotating in place is nothing new, it's been a thing for years. So how do you do it? You just rotate. But actually though, the main trick is that you want to crop your feet or your lower body, leaving it to the imagination of the viewer. Most people doing these trends don't actually have a rotating platform because trust me, when people have a platform, they tell you that they have a platform. But to make things really smooth and believable, remember to rotate your feet with your body, that way you're not contorting yourself and making things look really awkward. If you're doing a full body shot, you'll have to do this anyway. Genuinely, depending on the pose that you're doing and how you're moving, this actually does take a lot of core strength and balance. So if you see people doing really cool and dynamic poses, chances are it's actually a little bit difficult and they're really focusing. Another tip is to figure out what the feet are doing. A lot of poses are very intuitive, you just kind of move and do what your body allows you to do, but sometimes it's really hard and you need to figure out how am I supposed to balance with this pose. So then I will actually stop and break down what my feet are doing. Am I on my toes? Am I on my heels? Am I focusing the weight on the inside of my feet or the outside? Am I mixing things up? Am I alternating? Typically, if you keep things static or you gradually change things, you should be fine. It's randomly jerking in between that loses the wow factor. For the face, I think the hardest position is to keep your eyes straight forward and allowing your eyes to just follow everything, because it feels very intuitive to want your head to move, to let your eyes wander. A few tricks to combat that include keeping your gaze on the camera the entire time, looking to the side to keep your eyes in a fixed position, moving just enough so your eyes don't shift, or moving fast enough that it doesn't matter if your eyes shift. And the last tip, make it easy for yourself. For some of the shots I had to rotate on the carpet with my boots, and that was very difficult. So I just took a sock, put that on the ground, and used that to help me rotate. You can use paper, you can use plastic, you can pretty much use anything. Now, how do you actually edit the clips? Option 1 is using something like a CapCut template. As an editor, I have a bad habit of thinking, dang, everyone's pumping out all these edits, and then I remember there's templates for that. And most people don't know how to edit. So you can just go into CapCut, find whatever template works for you, stick your clips in, and it does all the work. Option 2 uses basic editing or just in-app features like Instagram Reels or TikToks. Most of the edits that I see from people who are doing this in-app or using basic editing software change positions with each clip. So they might rotate in one direction with one pose, and then rotate in the other direction with the second pose. You can get really creative with it. You can change the speed that you rotate, you can change the levels. If you want, put a marker down, that way you know where to stand each time. If you're trying to reverse in the same clip, one tip is to tense your entire body right when you reverse. That gives it a nice hesitation like you're suddenly changing speeds. Option 3. This is how I did it. There's probably better or more efficient ways to do it, but oh well. The first thing I did was watch the original edit a gazillion times and then figure out which poses would match my cosplay in terms of shape and mood. Then to make everything look nice and dark, I shot this at nighttime using my Nan lights covered with some barn doors, as well as my aperture light covered with a grid. And since I was wearing black, I did overexpose things, that way I could see a bit more details and highlights on my clothing. And if you want to know how I make my black backgrounds without using black backdrops, I have tutorials on both my YouTube and my TikTok channels. Just go to the tutorials playlist and you should be able to find them. From there, I opened each clip into After Effects and rotoscoped myself out, and then I just darkened the background with the levels tool to make everything look black. This is where things got messy. I like to export my edits as AVIs because it seems like they have the least amount of data loss, but that means the files are huge and can sometimes make my system lag. So if you're an editor who uses Premiere Pro and After Effects and has a better solution, please let me know. One thing you can do is to use proxies to help speed up the editing process. Anyway, from there I took those AVIs and opened them up in Premiere Pro and placed the original edit on top of those clips, that way I have something to reference. From there, I right-click the little FX button, click time remapping, and then speed. And for those who don't know, time remapping, speed ramping, velocity edits, they all mean the same thing. Essentially just means speeding up or slowing down the clip without a bunch of cuts, allowing for very smooth motion. And for those of you who paid attention for physics and science and math, you'll know that we're just essentially graphing the acceleration of each clip. At the start of each clip, I cranked the speed up to about 400 to 500%. I just kind of roughly eyeballed it. And after some frames, I just brought it down to 30 to 50%. But I also ramped out the speed in between to give it a nice little hesitation. If your top speed and bottom speed are too similar, your clip may look too continuous, too smooth. But if you have a lot of contrast between those two speeds, then you really get that feel that you're going from really fast to really slow. After that, I copy the clip, remove the time remapping, reverse the speed, and then increase the speed by like 200%. And again, I really eyeballed the shots because, to be honest, Premiere Pro's user interface is really ugly for this kind of stuff. It's very hard to be precise. I personally just don't know how to manually enter the speeds that I run for each keyframe. And I'm assuming After Effects would be a lot more user-friendly, but the main reason I use Premiere Pro is because I like to use it for things that are based on time and rhythm. It's easier for me to keep track of everything in Premiere Pro, and it's easier for me to play music in Premiere Pro and know where the beats should align. The last thing I did was make an adjustment layer and then add the effect directional blur. And then from there, again, while matching the original edit, I just keyframe the direction and the intensity of the blur. Adding and removing Having directional blur not only helps to simulate speed, but it also helps to create a smoother transition between the clips. You can add other bells and whistles like our grunge overlay, dust overlay, actual transitions, camera shake, but I just chose not to because I was happy with what I had.